Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 58th lesson of A Course in Miracles. And as every week, y'all, I am so very excited about our guest today. I realized I erroneously skipped lesson 58 in my last interview. So we will be highlighting lesson 58 today, which states, "There is nothing my holiness cannot do." There is nothing my holiness cannot do. And today, everyone, I am honored to welcome someone who has crossed over and now knows how powerful we all are. Lura Ketchledge had a near-death experience from a horse riding accident where she had a life review, and she's here to tell us about it. So welcome, Lura. I'm so very excited. Welcome to the sharing group.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So start wherever you feel you would like to start in your story, and we'll go from there.
I kind of like to start at the beginning, if that's okay with you,
Okay.
Loretta.
Yeah.
I come from a very nice, middle-class, educated family. We're Presbyterians. My grandfather was a minister. I was in the church choir and Bible school and all those things, but I really, really never was sold or rigid about my spiritual beliefs because I was a kid. So when I was 12 years old, I was a horse crazy little girl, Loretta. I mean, I just lived, breathed horses. And I went to a stable one day. I didn't know the people. I was put on a horse way above my abilities. Just to give you it was a terrible thing. It was a hot day. It was in the 90s, and I got on this horse, and I mean, it took off like a bottle rocket, and I could not handle it, and no one would help me. And we went straight onto the road on Hull Road, which is now Airport Road. The horse flipped up in the air, going at a very high rate of speed, this mare did, and crashed on top of me on the hot pavement, and we skidded. But I did recover. So, I mean, I'm obviously here. But what happened, why I'm really trying to tell you this story is that just before the horse was ready to crush me, and I was just almost before I was airborne, I shot out of my body. I was a parallel, about a dozen feet away. I could see the burnt leaves on the pine needles on the tree. I could see the little squiggle in my wavy hair in my back and the little green print t-shirt that my mother had made me a few weeks before. And I went out of my body, and then I was slingshot right back in, like slam dunked right back in. And then the horse fell on me. And at the very last minute, I put out my arms like this so my face wouldn't hit the pavement. Probably saved my life. It wasn't a thought out thing. It's just like an instinct. It was a terrible accident. I went into shock and didn't cry. And I got up on my leg and no one would help me. And I hopped one-legged back to a long ways back to the barn and called my mom and told her to come pick me up, and I was rushed to the hospital. Anyways, long story short, it was a gruesome accident. I won't go into it, but it was just gruesome injuries. I went out of my body. It felt natural. I was 12 years old. I tried to articulate it and then stopped myself because I just couldn't express it to other people. Okay. Years later, I mean, I didn't have anything psychic abilities after or anything like that. Still loved horses, still rode horses. And then when I was 19, I went riding in Centerville, Virginia. It was a beautiful April day. And I'd been riding around, getting off the horse, back on. Everything was okay until it wasn't. And I was cantering the horse, and the horse went into a hand gallop, which is the fastest a horse could go, like a bottle rocket. And I couldn't really control this horse. She was, or he, I don't know what it was too much for me. And there were some gentlemen riding behind me. I knew I was going to fall. I was scared. I was mad at myself, but I wasn't panicked. You know, I've taken tumbles off of horses, gone over a jump, but the horse didn't, you know. So what happened is I started to lean to my right, and then I was out of body. I never hit the ground. I went just 1 second saying an expletive deleted out loud because I knew I was going to fall, and it was an oh moment. I went into this tunnel at a high rate of speed. I left physical reality, Loretta.
Wow.
And it was a shock. Let me compare it to something that I think that the listeners would understand, Loretta, is this. Just say you go to bed one night and you're relaxed and comfortable, and it's in the middle of the night and you are dropped from Kansas into the Pacific Ocean. Boom, splash. That's how abrupt it felt.
Wow.
So the tunnel wasn't narrow. I was more like cylinder. I couldn't see anything around it. I was going at a high rate of speed, and I knew the walls were soft like velvet, but airy at the same time. I don't know how, and different texture than here, different texture. And that's when it happened. You know, that's my near-death experience. I mean, that's the beginning of it.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. So the second time that you went out of this first time was out of body.
Yes.
The second time was actually
A
near-death.
near-death experience.
What I love about your experience, Laura, is that there are so many people who have had loved ones that have transitioned on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And they are in anguish because they think about, oh my gosh, this person was, you know, they died this way, they suffered, you know, car accident or whatever. And that is really what keeps us in a place of just so much grief, is just worrying about how our loved ones, the pain.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love about your story and many other NDE stories is that a lot of times the soul exits the body before impact. So you do not actually feel that pain upon impact. What do you think of, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank God I never hit the ground because I was wearing a riding helmet. I always did. I had my helmet on, which probably is the only reason I came back. But I mean, there was like rocks, and I was falling into a bad place. It was kind of like a little gully rock, you know, face first. It wasn't good. But I never hit the ground. I never felt the impact. I never had the horror of seeing the ground rush to my face or that horrible impact. I was gone. So that was very merciful. But what was tough about it was, you know, I was 19 years old. I had my first apartment. I had a job where I actually made money. I had a beat up old Chevy Vega, which was paid for, and it was a piece of crap car. And I had a lot of boyfriends. I have to say, I mean, it's been a long time. And when you're older, you can say this. I was a pretty young girl having a good time.
Hey, I ain't mad at you. I ain't mad at you.
I had just begun to live, and I was sort of in love with a boyfriend, you know, that just magical, golden, youthful experience where everything's new and you have all this freedom. So it was so sorrowful to me that my life should end before it had began. Would you like to hear about the next step?
Yes, I would. Yeah.
This part has been edited, but I know, you know, I went out of body and I went through the tunnel. I met up with my late grandfather, who I loved and adored, and I had a life review. And it wasn't pleasant. Missed opportunities, a lot of sorrow, You know, I was dyslexic at a time before dyslexia was understood. And I really struggled in school, and I had a hard time reading. But then I could do other things brilliantly. Like, you know, I could ride horses. I could ride a bike. I could swim. I loved water things. I like to learn. So it was very, very polarized. You know, my childhood was very polarized of things I loved to do and then things I just couldn't do. So there was a lot of sorrow and a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of anger at myself for reacting the way I did in certain family situations. Like I wasn't the bad kid, but there was some severe dysfunction in my family, and I wish I had done it better. Anyways, I wasn't a serial killer. I was a 19-year-old kid. I never got a parking ticket, so I really was never in any big trouble. But it was very sad. And at the end of it, I felt tremendous sorrow. And I said to my grandfather, it's been so long. This life review in linear time was a very long experience, 5-6 hours.
Wow.
It was a very long linear experience. And as I said that, these terrible, awful sorrow started to lift, like it was being washed out of my brain. As it was being removed, the memories of the near-death experience were being lifted or erased, but the outline, the image of what I saw was there. So there was some things taken out, washed away. And I was talking to my grandfather, and the background was mauve, this dimension we were in, just outside of physical reality, was very different than the dimension of the near-death experience. Like the near-death experience really kind of takes you back in time, and you see your behavior, how it affects others, as if you were in that person. Okay, it was more than that, but I'm not that good of an explainer. It's very hard to articulate things that happen there because it's so much more than here.
Yeah.
The colors are more vivid. Everything's more intense. Everything's electric and almost a humming to the images, and it's just so much more intense than here. Would you like me to tell you how I felt?
Yes, I do. And I wanted you to expound a little bit. So with the life review, we're able to review those things, that how it maybe have impacted people negatively, and things that you may have impacted others in a positive way as well.
Yes.
Now, Laura, you were not judged by any energy or any beings. It was just
I was the judge. That's the thing. When you die, you're the judge and you're your own worst critic.
Yeah. That's what I thought. That's what I hear.
Loretta, there's something I really do want to share. There was no religious epiphany. I didn't see Jesus have a conversation with God. It was more of, let's say you step into another dimension with its own laws of physics that we don't understand, but there is a logic that is hard to express, that is there, that is not here.
That's incredible. So keep going. I'm looking forward to.
I was 19. This was the days before. I want to tell the listeners something. This is before the internet. This is before the conversation about near-death experience. This is so abrupt and shocking to a 19-year-old Protestant girl from Northern Virginia that I tell you, it was just so gut-wrenching. Every emotion that you could have roller coastered in me, up and down, joy, sorrow, gratitude, anger, all of these things just was a roller coaster. And it almost slams you in the face. It's so shocking. Had I been older and experienced life or known about near-death experience, it wouldn't have felt so catastrophic. If somebody had told me what the highway ahead was like, given me some warning signs, I would have done better. I didn't do well. And also, I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay with my grandfather. His image after my near-death experience was less visual, more blurred. I loved my grandfather. He died when I was 12. It's even hard to talk about it now. I miss him. I don't have any bad memories with him. He loved me, and he was a great guy. And I have so many of his interests. It's so funny. He's out of my life at 12, but we like the same things. It was very odd. We like the same food. We both love horses. We both love farm life. Later in life, I would get a horse farm. So much of his things that appealed to him appealed to me, which was really great. He liked to square dance. I love to ballroom dance. The impression I got from him was just, it was unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
And it carries over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't want to get, cry or anything, but it carries over. The love he felt for me the day that he died was just as strong on the other side as it is here, which is wonderful. And love doesn't die, it continues. It didn't skip a beat for him. It wasn't time for him. There is no time there. It's the dimension of no time, no linear time, which is just mind-blowing. But the great thing is, he's right there waiting for me. Still. So, let me ask you a question, Loretta.
Okay.
Don't you think that it is wonderfully important to tell people that the love that you have continues?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That is one of the things that I love about the NDE experience and your experience, Laura, is I had another guest on, and her parents together commit suicide. Together, they decided to commit suicide. And when when she crossed over, she realized, I can see my parents again, because a lot of times the religion that we grow up in, if you die suicide, right? You go to hell forever, right?
Yeah.
And it just gave her so much relief to understand that, no, I will see my parents again. They are in a place of love and light. And yes, I'm glad you brought that out, Laura, because it's important for the collective to understand that it is not a forever thing. It feels final for us, right? But and like you said, love never dies. Energy never dies.
No.
And once the soul exits the body, it's still around us.
The continuation of existence. Could I share with you what the lessons I learned right at that moment before I turned back to physical reality?
Yes.
Okay. Kindness, generosity are the most important things. Not just loving somebody, being nice to the girl at the bank that may be having a hard day. When somebody cuts you off, don't flip him the bird. I am not a saint. I'm kind of like ill-tempered at times. And I am so far from not a saint, but I did figure out at that moment that being kind, being generous, or making the effort to, maybe you don't get there, we're having a bad day too, but that is the most important thing. Love, generosity, and also the worst thing you could possibly do, the worst crime, the worst sin, the baddest of the baddest, is to interfere or damage another person's destiny. Let's say you're a really not nice husband, and you sabotage your wife. You sabotage her for school. You insult her. You change the course of her life. That's not the worst thing you can do. Doing violence to somebody, physical or mental, or that is the worst you can do. Or pretend like you're an executive and you work at a company and you're making the big bucks. And then the company decides to sell a product or a medicine. Some people are going to get hurt. Somebody's going to die. You know that this is a dangerous product, and you'll do it anyways because you're in a group and you're doing it anyways because you're making that big bucks. That is, or you start a war, you're a politician that contributes to war, you interfere in somebody's destiny, you hurt an innocent, you cause an innocent, or you don't take action to help an innocent person. So what happens to you is this: when you die, you're going to experience every single person that loved the person that was damaged, their anguish over their injury or death. You are going to experience, and it's not a punishment or it's not a hell, but you are accountable for the damage that you do to other human beings or animals. And I'm not saying this to scare somebody or this is fire and brimstone or anything like that, because it's not like that. But, and it's not like an accountability to punish you. It's for you to fully understand your actions and how they affected others. You're going to see the real effect, and you're also going to feel the effect if you hadn't been in their life, if you hadn't made that decision. You're going to see what their life could have been.
Wow.
So I knew that coming back, I got it. I got it. And there was a young man that I thought I was in love with at the time, and I just wanted to reach out and hug him at that moment. And I felt his loss, that I'd never be with him. And there was a whole more expansion of thoughts and feelings than I can put into words, more than your brain can contain in this dimension. So there was like an opening of your psyche that doesn't exist here. And some of it was good, some of it wasn't so good, but it was, for an emotional teenager, it was too much. It was too much. And that's why I believe it was shut down. A lot of it was shut down. Now the outline, the silhouette of my near-death experience is truly vivid. Some of the contents are faded. But just as all those things were hitting me like a train hitting me, my grandfather was trying to explain to me that I had to return. Then another roller coaster I went on of emotion, of like not wanting to leave him. It was like a second death. And then just like when you take a wine bottle and you pop the cork, do it in reverse. That's what it felt like coming back.
Wow.
And it hurt.
Yeah.
My body was hurt. And there I was back.
So at a certain point, your uncle explained to you, you got to go back. And
my grandfather.
Your grandfather explained to you, you have to go back. And like all other NDEs, of course, to separate from that love again.
It's horrible.
Was not something you want to do. Tell us about the curiosity. I've heard you speak about incredible curiosity that you had after your NDE, like where you wanted to consume information.
Well, after my near-death experience, we've had conversations, you and I know that you've read some of my articles and whatnot. I had a hard time assimilating this experience. I went to a therapist who asked me if I was having a pity party over my broken nose and hand. And, I tried to talk to the ER doctor, and then I just realized, I can't share this. It's maybe there was more of a dream, a hallucination, and it bothered me. You ever have something in your life that just sticks in your craw? It bothered me. And I tried to shut it out. And how I did it was just like living a little bit dangerous. It's kind of like risky behavior, just, dating a lot of guys, going to nightclubs, working in nightclubs. I just wanted to shut it out, tune it out, not hear the voice in my mind that kept questioning. So when I was in my very early 20s, a friend died, and I saw him. Wasn't a boyfriend. I saw him afterwards come into my room, and it was like, oh my God, I was so scared. And I just, it didn't hit me very well. Then I was at the library one day and I just started to look for things about our body. I just didn't want to talk to anybody. There was nobody to talk to anyways. I started and I got the book about Muldoon and I started reading it and it started to like click, click, click in my mind. More things came back, paying attention to that inner voice, the more into the intuition that I returned with that I didn't have before, things like that. But it was very difficult for me, very hard. And then I went and had the big conversation with my grandmother and told her about seeing her husband and things like that. And she was very open and receptive
Nice,
to it.
nice.
There's a reason why, though. Should I share that?
Absolutely.
Nobody told me growing up that my great-grandmother, my grandmother's mom, had the gift. Nobody told me. I had an uncle that had it. My grandmother knew things about it. And I was like, oh, wow, somebody should have told me this a long time ago. My great-grandmother, would you like to hear about her?
Absolutely.
She could do healings on people. She could, I guess it was my uncle, her son that got bee stung, was allergic to bees, and she cupped her hand over the sting and somehow did some sort of healing. People that were ailing or had questions in the community would come to her and she could read their tea leaves. This was not, she wasn't, some sort of hillbilly. She was a respectable middle-class woman living in the 1800s in rural Canada. Her husband was a well-respected professional blacksmith. They came from good people. They could read and write. They went to school. But she had these really, really unique abilities. And I'd heard, my grandmother started telling me the stories about her. It was like, wow, does this go through the family tree? And then I talked to an uncle who had what I had, these abilities that I came back with. And I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus, I'm not crazy. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It helped. It helped.
Yeah, I'm sure that was significant because when you talk about your NDE and you talk about how young you were 18, and I know that, a lot of times having an NDE, like you said, it wasn't normalized.
No.
And so you had this entire life shift that you were really pretty much having to deal with on your own.
Yeah, for a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a hard time with it. I blocked it out. I walked in the other direction from it. I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to forget it. It's not a part of my life. I'm here now. I'm gonna start a modeling career. I'm gonna blah, 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 blah. At the same time, I was having some physical illnesses and didn't understand it, which later turned into autoimmune disease, which I don't want to elaborate on. But this gave me a foundation, a shift in values, and also the inability to connect with other people, which is one of the things that NDEers have a problem with, is connecting to other people that don't have those core values, don't quote get it. That everything you do in this life matters. You don't have to go out and save the world. You just don't run over any kittens or nuns. Don't beat your kids. Don't belittle your neighbor, don't gossip, things like that. So anyways, I had that shift. And then finally, I finally got the courage and I thought, well, I've got to get some counseling because, I'm having these things that are happening. I'm seeing, having some visitations after deceased relatives, and I'm just not really cool with it. I happened to go by chance to a very, very good psychologist in New York City. I was living there at the time, who absolutely listened, didn't judge. After I spilled my guts after knowing her for a few months, she said, okay, I think you've had a near-death experience. I know you don't do drugs. There's no alcohol, no mental illness. you're a little bit of a neurotic young woman. That's about my diagnosis. So she said, you know what I think you should do? I think you should read Robert Monroe's books. I think he is an excellent, valid person. I didn't want to get into like the quote unquote paranormal because I thought there was a lot of misguided people, a lot of charlatans. I read Robert Monroe's book about out-of-body experience and it was like, oh gosh, I wish I'd had this a few years ago. It made sense. He did the most credible research. He is probably, there's two authors that I would read or recommend. Robert Monroe, Journeys Out of the Body, his book series, and William Buhlman, his books about the afterlife. Those are the two most credible that kind of go in what I went, the direction I went of more factual, less come to Jesus. So I read Monroe's books. I had more experiences with the other side without fear. And letting go of the fear was my biggest obstacle. Letting go of the fear really was.
Tell us about that, Laura. Like you had some interactions after the NDE, it heightened your abilities. Can you talk about some of the things that you experienced?
Sure. I didn't talk about it for 30 plus years because I didn't want to be labeled a wackadoo. But I wrote a book series because so much of the stuff was occurring and I had such a hard time processing it. I didn't want to do first person book because I'm not that interesting. I can't, tell you the lotto numbers. I can't, if I was that psychic, I wouldn't have married that guy, things like that. Okay. So what I did is I had a dream about a book. I had a dream of a story. And I'm dyslexic. I can't write a book. Well, turns out I could. So I poured into my novels all the paranormal events, the psychic events and how things work on the other side into a paranormal romance mystery series because I just had to get it out. It was very cathartic. And then I got to write about, I made up these characters sort of off of people I didn't like in this world and I had a good time with it. Okay. So there is some humor in it, some irony, but oh my gosh, I finally started to talk about it, and that was a relief because I got some feedback after I've done some television and some guest appearances that there were other people like me that just wanted to hear they weren't alone. There were other people like me that didn't want to get the religious dogma involved in it.
Yes.
So that was my reward for doing it.
I was going to say, and I'm so glad you brought up the books, and I want you to talk about the books. Give us some titles and where people can buy them. Okay. And it's so significant, Laura, your contribution.
Oh, that's kind of you.
I'd like for you to know how significant your contribution.
Well, I tried to make a good story, a romance novel, paranormal romance novel that always has a mystery or a murder to solve without preaching, without telling people, oh, this is what you should do. You know how you get on those evangelical people go, oh my God, this is what you should do and give me money. No, right. I'll give you some entertainment in my books. My first book is called NearDeath Action. And a tragedy happened.
What's the last word?
Connection.
Connection.
Near-death connection.
Got it.
Okay. So the great thing about this book is it takes place in 1979. One of the characters has a near-death experience falling off a horse, very similar to mine, so was able to write it well. So there's a tragedy. This is Northern Virginia, 1979, Middleburg, Virginia. And this doctor gets a group of near-death experiencers from the hospital files and brings them to a house, a haunted house, where there is ghostly visitations, and they're trying to decipher what the visitations are. There's also two young men who are in competition for a young woman's love. But I go into, each character recounts their near-death experience. And I try to write them as vividly as I can, as factually as I can, without preaching, and how each person's differs. And almost your near-death experience is very tailored to you. Some people will have a totally different experience than yourself, the same basic theme. So with that saying, it's like a very long book. And then it leads into the second book, where a minor character, Sharon Landry, lives in Middleburg, and she's in her 40s, and there's mysteries she has to solve. But the first part of the book, she tells about the terrible, awful thing she did in Ormond Beach, Florida in 1959. So I take it back to another period of time. And her psychic abilities are very tailored towards my great-grandmothers. So I take old stories and recycle them. And out of all of my characters and all of my books, Sharon Landry is the most autobiographical, because she's got chutzpah, nerve. She says what she says, even if it's politically incorrect. And she's got a sense of humor, and she's a wild girl underneath, but she is the most fun to write. And then she buys this house, and it turns out the ghosts had orchestrated her buying a house and living there for a reason. But I don't want to reveal it because it'll ruin the book. And then the third book is Reincarnation Connection. So a minor character out of the first book, Tess Hamilton, her husband locks her out of her house, leaves her on the streets of New York City. She goes to a hotel. She takes an anti-nausea pill to settle her stomach, has an anaphylactic experience where she dies. And when she dies, she is showed her whole past life as Abigail Cantrell, first person view and in tandem as the character. But everything that I do in these novels, there is a method to my madness, a story to be told, an explanation to be had, a meaning. And I put Easter eggs into all the near-death saga book series so that they connect, but I'm explaining the afterlife and my paranormal encounters through fiction. Because I really don't want to get up on a podium and go, oh, and this happened to me and that happened to me. And people will think, well, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But most of them did. So like there's 80% of the real deal in these novels. And then there's some fiction and there's some embellishment. And of course, the characters are always better looking in the book than in real life. And that's a little more glamorous there,
Well, I love that you were able to find a creative outlet to talk about your experience. In a lot of ways, Laura, with the books and the movies and that, you are normalizing. You are changing the experience that you had after your NDE, when you talk to the doctor and you talk to, some folks in the medical community who definitely dismissed you. You are changing that narrative by normalizing the experience and allowing people, even through fiction, to be able to experience that and not feel so alone. And I love that.
Oh, thank you very much. Folks that have a near-death experience, you can talk about it. You're not waving the freak flag anymore. Don't preach at people. That's my best advice. Don't tell them how to do it, and you know how to do it better, because nobody does. But to share your near-death experience with your loved ones and folks, I think is very, very important. I've heard from people that still haven't told their spouse.
Wow.
Because they just feel so, the ultimate closeted experience, that you don't want to be different, that you don't want to even express your fear. When you die, it is unknown. We don't have the roadmap, but now today, I think we have a little better idea of what happens in the afterlife, and that there is a continuation of existence. Death isn't real. You do leave physical reality. At some point, everybody does. So you might as well read the roadmap before you go and take the trip.
That's right. That's right. What else I love about what you've done, right? Is you talked about when you were inspired with this story, you spoke with a friend and he was like, why don't you write about it? And you said, I'm dyslexic, I'm not a writer. But I love that you were able though to
I surprised myself. I mean,
yeah, many times we put ourselves in that box, right?
Yeah,
We're saying, I'm not this, I'm not that. And
yeah.
look, you busted right out those limitations.
I wrote notes in my late 20s and early 30s, and then I went in for a surgery and had a stroke during the surgery, minor one. But it left me with the inability to write longhand. I still can't write longhand. I can barely write out a check. So when I got a computer and was able to type, I was surprised because I took typing in high school. I was a bad typist, but I took it. I was able to type like a demon. It didn't affect that part of the brain. And when I started writing the story, it just started to flow. I mean, the first book that took me 5 years to write because I wanted to figure out how to tell what I already knew, the storyline, how to do it. But my last two books just, oh my God, they were like one was them like 400 pages, and it could have been more. It just came right out and got easier, and I felt like I'd had some help or something because I flunked every English class I ever encountered. But there's a part of the brain sometimes I didn't think there was any upside to dyslexia, but apparently there is. Later in life, as I became a writer and filmmaker, there is a side of the brain that's not affected, that is, some things are very, very easy to me that some other authors have a big struggle, like the creating part is very, very less, not too much of an effort. It takes a lot of concentration. I gotta, think things out. But I never thought there was an upside to dyslexia, so I found the slim silver lining.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, Laura, if you don't mind, can you talk about you've had some shared death experiences, or you've had folks show up for you that transitioned and you were able to know that they transitioned before other members. Tell us about that.
Well, I had a good friend of mine who was killed in an accident come to me, basically floated into a room and had the image of I guess they call it orbs or a point of consciousness. So that's happened like quite a few times to me, knowing somebody has passed that I didn't have any information on. And sometimes you can have a mental image of them and it's kind of abrupt. At this point, it's not a scary experience. Or sometimes people have come to visit me with love and concern. I was in the hospital at one time and in very rough shape, and had an orb or a ball come into the room, which was kind of like comforting. I didn't feel so alone and took some of the fear off. And I did make it, or I wouldn't be talking to you. So I've had some, things like that. One thing that is really kind of comforting is I've seen some of my pets after they died, they were dead. And that really is very, very cool. I know there's some people that say that animals do not have souls. Yes, they do. They can visit you afterwards, and the love is still there. So hopefully when I'm in the afterlife, after completing this physical reality journey, that I'll be reunited with pets that I love, the family that I like. Maybe somebody romantically, who knows what's going to be, and then maybe avoid all the people you don't care for. So there is a comforting part of that. I do want to say something that's really important to me, if I could.
Okay, absolutely.
I don't want to romanticize a near-death experience. Having a terrible accident that kills you, a lot of people don't come back. And sometimes when they come back, they're very damaged for life. It's no picnic, nothing you'd want to seek out. There's nothing romantic about it. I made something good out of something horrible and went on with my life. There's nothing no way I can convey to you that like I'm not idealizing suicide. We're here to complete a little mission, and the mission and what the purpose of in physical reality is, this is a big school. And you know, you can't cheat. You kind of got to go through it to graduate. So I don't believe in suicide. I do believe in assisted transitioning when someone's seriously ill. There's no sin or taboo about that, except in our the religious dogma that rules this country. This country in many ways is a theocracy, and it really should be a democracy where we all can follow our own spiritual journey, whatever that may be. You know, you might be Hindu or Christian or whatever. I consider myself having Judeo-Christian values, but don't exactly believe in the literal word of the Bible anymore. It's a great way to explain things to a simple people and to keep people in order. But that's my whole idea of it.
Yeah, thank you for a couple things you said that I would like to highlight is thank you for saying that the NDE experience is not something to seek out, of course, but I do love that those who unfortunately have to transition and come back, that we all get to learn from. It's the NDE experience, Laura, that kind of blows the fog of what you were talking about with the religion and the dogma and the judgment. You know, many people fear what's on the other side because they are afraid, you know, of a hell, and they're afraid. And so it is important to share those downloads that you all experience so that people can kind of say, you know what, that feels better than what I've heard. And I also wanted to go back to a point that you made as far as your life review, where you learned that things that we do to people or how we make people feel, we get to feel and experience. And you talked about it is not a punishment, and it is not a punishment. And I just wanted to make the point that this is actually how the soul learns. So when we go back on the other side and we say, oh, wow, when I said that, this person was really crushed, or when I did that for that homeless person, I really just kind of changed their energy, which changed their life. It's a way that the soul gets to experience. It's kind of the reason why we're here.
You know, we're here for a big school.
Yeah.
Can I say something that I forgot to tell you earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. This is my theory, and I think it's kind of an important thing to share. Okay, Loretta. There's people that have near-death experiences, and they, you know, say they've gone to hell and there's been demons and blah, 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 and all this terrible stuff has happened. Think about when you die, the afterlife is more thought responsive. You have these fears in you, you know, the devil and the boogeyman, and he looks like this, and then you actually see him. These fears, this hell is more of a thought projection. You're projecting your own fears and creating this reality. So people will say these, you know, fire and brimstone things about their near-death experience, and they really did have it, but they created it. There is really no hell and there's no devil. But you take that fear with you and you will project it into a hell or a devil. Let's say you're having a near-death experience and you're seeing demons or something. To anybody who is going to die or something like that is going to happen, my suggestion is this. This is my hypothesis. Let go of your fear. Try to do it before you die. It'll make your transition easier. And also, if you're experiencing a demon, visualize sending it love, making it dissolve in front of you. That demon may turn into a soft little puppy and may turn into a puddle. It's about letting go of the fear. You take those fears with you when you transition. You're still you, flaws and all, warts and all. You're still you. luckily you're your best, youngest version of you when you transition over. You're 19 again or 18 again and looking good and don't have the pot belly or the smoker's cough, but you can take that fear. And I think when people are talking about their near-death experience and the demons and the hell, I think it's all a thought projection. I think they create that because they have this basic fear from religious dogma of it being terrified. Listen, if the priests of old, hundreds of years ago, didn't terrify you, they couldn't get the collection plate full. So it's motivation, human motivation that gets that puts this fear. Letting go of your fear is very, very important. Living out your best life is important, doing your best. And basically, you can't take your money and your stuff with you. It is scary, the thought of death. It's less scary for me. The thought of not finishing my life and the thought and getting better and growing as much as I can and learning the best lessons I can. That's what I fear, not finishing out well. But not dying.
What you just said is so significant and so consistent with other NDEers. Everything you said is absolutely right. The belief system that you have now, clear that up, make sure it's accurate, because you do take that with you. We do not understand, because we've been conditioned into smallness. We don't understand how powerful we really are. Our souls are powerful, and we create that experience on the other side. Side. And you're absolutely right. If you feel guilty, if you feel bad, or you feel like you don't deserve love, clear those feelings up now. Work now.
Letting go of it, Loretta, letting go of anger.
Yeah.
Not being an angry person. You take that anger with you. You're a mean old curmudgeon. You're going to be a mean old curmudgeon on the other side. Letting go of that. We all have issues that we have to clear up in this life. And some people really have a disadvantage in their life. I mean, but nobody skates, nobody goes through life, if you live 50 years unscathed, even the rich person, even the gorgeous girl in high school, she's going to have her problems too. It's all just a whole education of life. Sometimes I do better than others. Can I share with you about my dad?
Yes, please.
Yeah. My dad was an engineer, and he was a good guy, and he was a little bit uptight guy. He was a minister's son who never really bought into religion all that much, but he went to church and stuff. And I came down to Florida to take care of both. My mother had stage 4 cancer. Daddy had Parkinson's and heart issues. So my mother and I had a lot of talks before she got cancer about transitioning in the afterlife. She'd read Monroe's books. She was very, very open to it. And, I talked to her a lot. So I think her transition was probably fairly easy. I was there when she died, fairly easy. And I was happy for her when she died, because the pain of the cancer was over. She was free. She wasn't suffering anymore. And, I felt really, really good that she wasn't suffering. So I took care of my father for a few years. And, I was never close to my dad or really ever had a personal conversation with this man until I was his caretaker. And we talked about things. And, I said, Dad, do you want me to explain what happens after you die? I said, you're pretty sick. Would you like? No, I don't want to know. You don't exist. Life is over. Religion tells us one thing. It's a fantasy. Oh, he went on. I said, okay, so you don't want to talk about it? He goes, no. I said, okay, I'm not pushing I'm not recruiting. So that was okay. And we got very, very close. He confided in me. He confided in me that he never wanted to have children, and he didn't like being a parent. And he regretted being a parent because he just couldn't be there for his kids the way, you know, other dads were. And so there was a lot of forgiveness on both our ends. Like, we healed a lot, you know. And as he was dying, he went, it was very, very bad. But I brought him home. I wouldn't let him die at a hospital. So I'd been up all night giving him morphine when the nurses there, the hospice, the whole drama had been going on for months. And I just had to get some sleep on him. It was like 6 in the morning, and I have to get some sleep. I'd been going for 2 days. So I drifted off to sleep, and then click, I was somewhere else. I was out of my body. My dad and I were in a car. There was no color, no pigmentation in the car. And he was driving, and I thought, oh, good Lord, we took his license because of the Parkinson's, and he shouldn't be driving, you know? And I looked at him, and he wasn't in his 90s.
Wow.
He was young and younger. And then we stopped at this place, and I'm ready to like going, well, you know, and I've wanted to give him all this information about the transition, and, you know, like, I know everything. I'm going to tell you, Dad. And he stood in front of me, and he said, you know, I'm ending my life. I'm tearing up my contract.
Wow.
And he had this, like, it looked like a phone book, what it wasn't, but it was a lot of papers. And in those papers were images, events of his life, things like that. And then he ripped it in front of me. I'm ending.
Wow.
And I was like in shock because he's right there. He's looking younger. He has more hair. He's looking good and fit. And then I said, oh, how can you end your life now? I mean, it's like things were getting better. It was like getting back to normal. And then, boom, I'm back in my body, sitting up, and I'm hearing my dad in the last gasps of his life, that Shane Stoke horror. If anybody has been with somebody that's dying and hearing those last gasps. And I ran downstairs, and he had his last gasp, and he died. And I give him a kiss, and I'm crying and upset. But I'm also touched because it was a shared death experience, which I didn't know about. Since I don't read anybody else's books, this is terrible. And I don't read anything about the paranormal or anything that anybody else does, because I don't want it to change my point of view. So it was a shared death experience. He was telling me that he was okay. It was his choice to end his life right at that moment. And he was calm. He was a matter of fact. And he was in control, and he was younger. And I was by his side.
Wow.
So, you know, I kissed him and I hugged him, and I'm, you know, you're crying. It's still awful. It's awful to lose your last parent. But I was so happy that he had transitioned without fear. He didn't take that religious fear and dogma with him.
Yes.
He didn't have belief in the afterlife. And now he's with my mom, and they're okay. And it's like, I'll see him again, you know, we'll be reunited. We'll watch TV together, you know. He loves 60 minutes.
When you were engaging with him, Laura, in the dream, I guess that's how
it wasn't a dream. It was an out-of-body experience.
I know. But did you think it was a dream at the time? Because you
said, no.
Okay, you knew. Wow.
When you're out of body, I have to tell you, it's like a light switch goes on, and you are so much more aware, and your vision is better, and your hearing is better, and your senses and your intuition. It's like, you know, 50 cups of coffee, you're awake.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I respected him. He had done this very, very strong living will, and when he got into hospice, he wanted out. Yeah. No heroics. Yeah.
You know what, Laura, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on your lovely show.
Oh, are you kidding me? It's been a pleasure. So as we're closing out, I wanted to ask you, are you open to being contacted if people wanted to interact with you? And if so, what is your preferred method for them to reach out?
There's no psychic readings. I don't interact with people, give them advice or readings. If you want to read my book and then contact me about it on my website, LuraKetchledge.com, LuraKetch.com, great. But I don't interact with the public about this. I'm just an average person that had a near-death experience and writes about it. I'm nobody special.
You are something special, Lura. You are something special.
Maybe in that after-school special kind of way, but
you are funny. You are funny. Are there any last positive words you would like to share with the audience?
Well, the beautiful thing about a near-death experience is I got to see firsthand. It's known for me. It's a known fact, the afterlife. It's not a belief or a wish. And the fact that love continues and I'll be reunited with people I love, pets I love, and hopefully a handsome man in the next world. It works for me.
Listen, speaking in the universe.
It gives me, quite seriously, it gives me great comfort to know that no one is alone.
Yeah.
That there is someone that still loves us, even if they're no longer here. So that helps, because grief is a horrible thing, but knowledge is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And Lura, I'm going to read your closing remarks. So Lura, we rely on the near-death experience to give us clarity on the beauty and the love awaiting us after our bodies expire. Your willingness to share your experiences with the world gives us all hope that we will one day see our family and friends again, regardless of their religious beliefs or their actions or inactions, that we are made of love, for love, from love. Thank you for accepting this incredible purpose of sharing your remarkable experiences from the other side, and for using your creativity, Lura, to help spread awareness of the near-death experience through your books. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today, and thank you for being here. Thank you so much. And thank everyone who is tuning in to today's show. I love each and every one of you. Please forward it, please subscribe, and please forward it to people who have maybe loved ones who've transitioned, who maybe have a fear of death. I mean, there's so much packed into this particular session with Lura, like so much wisdom and so much comfort, and just share it to folks who you think will benefit from it. And thank you all for joining. And Lura, we do a heart at the end. Love and light, everyone. We love you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.